world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Stephanie.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen. Welcome back to the Soulful Leader Podcast. I'm Maren, and I'm here with Stephanie. And we were talking just before we came on about the parts of us that are poor sad tomatoes.
Aww, and what I mean poor sad tomato.
Poor sad tomato. And we laugh and we laugh about this because those are the parts of ourselves that are poor me. And we drop into them so effortlessly.
Yeah, like naturally, which is really scary when we can drop into those poor, sad tomato. Oh, poor you. Oh, I'm so sorry. And I don't mean it from an insincere way. It's like, we have these ouches, these places. And I feel as a culture, we tend to do one or the other. We either like go into self-pity with people and we don't hold them accountable. And I don't mean it in a way of like, well, you just need to do more. You need to go and you need to pick your bootstraps up and away you go and put your big girl panties on there, Stephanie, and away you go. Not from a harsh place, because that's where we tend to default to, or we will go to another place and go, oh yeah, I know, it's really hard. You can't do it. Oh, poor you. I'm sorry. Maybe, maybe it's just not meant to be. Wah.
So there's a place between those, which is called compassion. And when we have true compassion, we can feel with somebody, even with ourselves, of like, oh, I get that. That's from a wound. And I can understand it. And I can hold space and love you through it and not feel sorry for you, including myself. Like I'm talking to me now, right? So if I'm in a position where it's like I'm driving home from work and I've got my itty bitty shitty committee going through my head of like, nah, this happened and poor me. And then I get into like, into the poor me's and all the things that people did to me or that I did to myself and blah, 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 right? So where do I go? One of those two places that you mentioned, either, all right, suck it up, be a big girl, shut up and get over it. Or further down into the poor me, I need to call my friend and tell my friend how bad this day was and how much it sucked. And then he's gonna be like, yeah, it sucked. Or, pull your panties up. Come on.
Right. And
how do we step into that place that's actually between the two and higher than either of them, that steps us up a level and invites us to a higher way of looking at it, of being with it, because it's not even looking at it, it's being with it.
You're bringing up something really interesting and stepping up and showing up to another level, because I say, you can't have what you want by staying on the level that you're at. You have to grow. You need to go to the next level. And I love the Matrix movie where it says, I think Trinity says to Neo as he's looking down the street and he's going, oh yeah, really good noodles. I used to like that life. And, she says to him, you've been down that street before. You know where that street ends. Do you really want to go back? And sometimes we do. We go like, oh, it was so much easier when I was younger. It was this. And that's a poor, sad tomato story.
And that's in it. Speaking of the movie, right? There is the character in there that wanted so badly to go back to sleep.
Totally.
Right?
Go back to sleep. I don't want to wake up. It's too hard. It's too uncomfortable. My life was easier, better, whatever you put in there. But the thing is, it isn't. If you really went back because you're not the same person anymore. And I'm going to give that a kind of a visual for some of you, that because I know you're listening. When Maren says step up and show up to another level, think of like a cross, like you have that horizontal and then you have the vertical. And most of us only ever live on the horizontal part of that cross. We are born, we go through different things in our life, and then we end up, we might have a marriage or a divorce, or things happen. We have kids, we have cats and dogs and whatever happens, and then you die, kind of thing. That's
So
what we call flatland.
flatland, right?
It's very flat. And most of us that live on that are going to experience anxiety, depression, worry, fear, doubt. We all will feel that. But what I'm finding as we're starting to work with, both Maren and I are working with what's called vertical. So if you think of that vertical part of the cross that's going up, it's like that's where we need to step up. It's like, if I want something in my life, and I'm going to be very transparent here, it's like something that's very dear and true to me all my life, I've said, is that I want to be masterful in relationship, in a love relationship. Like everything else in my life, I seem to like things will happen and different stuff. And I don't seem so attached to it. It's like, oh, I had neck pain, and that pain led me to becoming a massage therapist, and, or financial. And I've learned how to overcome financial, but it's not a big deal to me. It's not, I mean, it's a deal, it's a big deal, but it's not a big, big deal. But my big, big deal, my big, hairy, audacious goal deal is really, how do I become masterful in a loving relationship and also do my outer life? Like, I tend to give away myself, or I people please, or I'll have abandonment issues that come up. I have more issues. There's my poor, sad tomato stories are more in my relationships with loved ones than it is with anybody, with anything
Hmm.
else. And so I'm going to just give you a moment to say, do you have a poor, I'm sure you do. Do you have a poor, sad tomato story? Could be health, could be finances. Maren, have you got a poor, sad tomato story?
I do have a poor sad tomato story, and it's really around I think that the biggest thing for me is providing for myself. And I've I've attracted wealth, and I've had my father was very wealthy, my husband had a great job. I have inherited a lot, and I've always had a challenge with providing for myself. And it's interesting now that I'm saying it out loud, I see it in my mom too. So yeah, they can be generational, the things we take on. And poor me, I didn't make any money. I've got, however much crazy amounts of money in the bank. Poor me. Ah, my business is only at a break even. Oh, I only did, like the drama that I can get into with that. And I I know how to manifest money. I have it coming in this area and that area and that, and then my business, or one particular area of my business, it it thwarts me every time. And I'm like,
Right. So for those who can't see on the video, Maren is making poor, sad tomato faces right now. So you can imagine what that might look like.
and sounds.
And sounds, yes. So interesting, isn't it? It's like, it's not about being perfect or having it the way you think the world wants it to be for you. But there's something that drives us, something that motivates us. And this is a real key, because I've been, I would say, I call it rotor rooting constantly. Like I'm always looking at like, okay, so how could I be better? What could I do differently? And da 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 da. And you can hear my doing aspect of it. And I could say, well, I need better boundaries. I need to articulate my needs better, needs and wants. These are all our previous podcasts, by the way, people, which are great things to do. And that, again, I'm going to highlight to do. So this is a shift. And so here's where I've been shifting lately. If I want what I say I want, I need to become someone different than who I am right now. I cannot stay the same Stephanie and attract what I say I want.
So I'm going to interrupt you there,
Hmm.
because that's just one more thing to do, Isn't it?
Sounds like it, doesn't it? It's
Does,
like,
doesn't it?
oh, maybe I should go to the gym and work out more. And oh, maybe I need to eat better. And oh, maybe I need. No. So here's what I'm going to suggest. It's like, now it's about turning inside. I have a saying, you know, if you don't go within, you'll go without. So think about that for a minute. If you don't go inside yourself, if you don't go within, look, listen, and feel, then you will go without it in your outer life. So, whatever you say you want, whether it's abundance, whether it's a lover, whether it's a business, whether it's, I don't know, health, well being, energy, if you don't go inside and listen, see, listen. I didn't say do something, fix it. There's nothing to fix. It's going inside and being still, working on being silent and listening to all the itty bitty shitty committee, which you think is you, which it is not. I had someone recently say, oh my God, Stephanie, you're so controlling. And I'm like, I'm not controlling. Your thoughts that you are believing are controlling you to think that I'm controlling.
So when as our listeners are listening to this, one of the things I want you to contemplate is awareness. There is an awareness within you that is bigger and broader and different from the thoughts that you're having. And how do you know that? Well, if you looked at your thoughts, who is doing the looking? That's the awareness. There are no that, and that's what Stephanie is talking about is
Mm-hmm.
stop and become aware of that there is an essence, the real you, the
Mm-hmm.
deeper you, the higher you, the broader you, the deeper you, that can become aware of those thoughts. That means that those thoughts are not who you are. And you can not have to identify with them.
That's right. So going back to the poor sad tomato, the poor sad tomato story, oh, poor me, throw this poor sad tomatoes onto the stage and annihilate the person that's up there. If we went inside, what does the poor sad tomato believe, think, feel? Because we're none of those things. We're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, we're not our body. Interesting, isn't it? We are also not our past. We have a history, but we're not our history. We are actually our more of potentiality to step up and show up and reach our highest potential actually comes from our future. So we need to stop giving our energy to our past self of who I used to be. My identity, identity, that's the ego. And those things will fade away. Trust me, they fade away. No matter how much duct tape and how much Botox and how much nothing keeps anything up anymore. Like you got it's got to be done from the inside. And that's what are you left when everything else is gone? Like what is left? I said this to someone the other day. I said we all want control, don't we? Like who doesn't want more control? Oh yeah, it makes you feel powerful. So who controls your heart? Who makes it beat? Oh, you
Mm.
might be able to make it slow down or speed up, but do you have control over being able to make it stop or start? Nope. So who's doing that? Just like Maren said, who's thinking those thoughts? Who's believing those things? Who's breathing? Who's speaking? Who's listening? That who we need to build a relationship with that. So if you want an outer relationship, what is your inner relationship with yourself like? And I've been practicing with myself with this and like saying, well, what is it that I really want to move into my future with? What is my future calling me to step into? So that poor sad tomato will literally give you that flag about where your gifts and strength, because that's where everything is hidden. That's where your gifts lie. So when there's something that I really, 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 really want, I know there is some treasure to be found. So when I look at it and say, well, what kind of relationship do I want in the outer world? Okay, I can come out and say, well, I want someone who's really loving and present for me in my life, and it's not just, you know, um, a roommate, but is also like a lover and a best friend. Boy, I want a lot, right? Those are all expectations I could put. And that's exactly what happens when I put it out there and try to get someone to fill my need. it will be heavy and hard and probably more than likely not possible. However, here's the poor sad tomato story. If I switch it and I say, okay, Stephanie, what would being a lover to yourself mean? What would being a best friend mean? I mean, you
Yeah.
think about those two things. Like a lover would not toss you out, would not abandon you, would not reject you, would not shame you. A lover would say, oh, I love you so much. Are you having a hard time? I'm right here with you. What do you need?
They would also not go down the poor
The-
sad tomato
right.
story
They actually would
with you.
stop you. They'd actually say, is
Yeah.
that true? They would challenge you.
Because they love you that much.
And they want the highest potential for you. And so does a best friend, really. So, how do we adopt that inside? And it's like, it isn't something to do. This is what I would call a presencing practice, is that I look at the quality and it might, so one of the qualities I'm working with right now is obedience. Isn't that interesting, that word? We kind of took it out of the marriage vow. But obedience, if you take that word, it means to be be the essence of a divine
Mm,
marriage, of balancing the right and the left and the up and the down and it's unity, actually. Obedience means to be one with the essence of truth, of love, of harmony, of beauty. Like, who
mm,
doesn't want that? I want that.
right.
So I've been practicing being obedient. So I might find something beautiful that I want to come closer to, and I breathe it in and I feel it and I be
So
with it.
you become the essence of
I
that.
become the essence of that. It's not about going out and trying to make it happen in the outer world. That's exhausting.
Or making somebody else be obedient to you or you to them, or all of that stuff that gets brought up when we think about it in the marriage vows, right?
That's right. That's
Of
right.
being the essence of love, of beauty for myself. Because one of our other podcasts we talked about where it's like, I cannot give something that I don't have. So if I have not become the essence of love for me, then I cannot give that love to you.
Exactly.
Or the other thing is, I can't receive that love from you.
Mm. And we push it away,
Right.
which then just reinforces the poor, sad tomato story.
Yes, it
You see
does.
this cycle? It's like, what if we could be completely still and allow the great unknown, who actually makes our heart beat, puts breath into our lungs? Like, you go to sleep at night, people. Like, seriously, you breathe and your heart beats. Like, who's doing that? You're not doing that. You're not conscious.
Thank goodness that
Thank
I
goodness,
am
right?
not the
I don't have to
one
think about
who
that.
has to think about that. Because
Right.
just like everything else in my life, I would forget that.
So
Oh, crap.
what's right? So what's your job to do? What's my job to do? My job is to tune into who I need to become to step into the life I want to be. And it isn't about thinking about, well, I don't have all the details. I'm not really clear. So I'm going to tell you something. It's about commitment. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have that clarity. It'll help. But the thing is, as you are committed to doing it, clarity becomes clear.
And I want to take this back to how this is going up the vertical versus
Yes.
across the horizontal. So, as we go and we trudge through our lives, and oftentimes it feels like that, like we're trudging through our lives because we don't have a higher perspective. Think about if you go up into, like a skyscraper, the difference that it looks, up into an airplane, the ground looks so much less significant. Like all the little things, they become insignificant, little people in our lives. It's like, that was such a big deal when I was on the ground. And it's not such a big deal anymore. They become smaller and more manageable. And so, as we move across the landscape of our lives, when we do so from expectations, and we had a podcast, I think it was podcast number 70, you can go back and listen to that, all around expectations. When we're living other people's expectations or even our own expectations, then what ends up happening is we stay on that horizontal and we move across in a way that it looks the same as everybody else. And maybe I'm making a little more money, or maybe I'm making a little less money, or maybe I have the cool person in my life, maybe I don't, and nothing's really changed. Where transformation happens is when we get that higher perspective, when we're able to go up a few levels and able to go up in the airplane or up onto the skyscraper and really look at things differently and see it from a different perspective. And the way to do that, and this is what Stephanie is talking about, is that inner journey.
Mhm.
It's not, there isn't an outer way to get there.
And I'll tell you, I have fought it, that inner journey. I have fought it pretty much most of my life. And so for me to go into the inner journey, I seem to have programmed myself to go through great pain and suffering to go in there. And so this is what I'm learning right now. And I've wanted to change that programming a long, long time ago. I've been aware of it, but because it's so familiar to me, I default back to that way. And so it's not about becoming better, it's about becoming more masterful of being in relationship, not doing, being in relationship, and that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to, learn things along the way. That's the most extraordinary thing, because what you're doing is building new hardware in the brain, so to speak. You're building new wiring in the brain so that you can disconnect from the old you and reconnect to the one that's actually pulling you into the future.
You literally are rewiring your brain to a new way of being. And one of our teachers has always said, like, you can do that the hard way, which is going back, and Stephanie had mentioned it earlier, roto-rooting, going back through all the old stories and da da da. And that is one path, and it will get you there, and it will be hard. And there are people for whom that's their path.
And it's important to get the consciousness about what took you there. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that you need to balance it also with with the beauty in your life too. Because if you want to create a new programming, a new wiring in your brain, you need to have both. So
Well,
you get the idea, but you don't want to stay there. I always say, someone said,
right.
I want to know what's going on. I want to be informed. So I watch the news. And I said, and they asked me if I watch the news. And I said, I'll be honest with you, I don't. And here's why. One, I'm very empathic and I have a huge heart and compassion. And I know how easily affected I get. And so I don't want to close my heart down. I don't want to shut down and become hardened by life. I want to be opened by life. And I don't necessarily want to be opened by trauma anymore and drama. I really want to change that in my beingness too. I don't want to have to always be reacting. I want to be in a place where I can use my life energy towards responsiveness and kindness. So I said, if I do watch it, I tend to like notice or watch things around lunchtime because I have the highest energy at that time that I can then sort it out. I don't want to watch it first thing in the morning because I'm tired and it kind of sets my tone for my day. And I don't want to watch it at the end of my day because now I'm going to go to sleep with it. And I really don't sleep very well when I do that. So I've set myself up in the way again. It's like Gandhi says, be the change you want to see in the world. So I've set my intention that the things I need to know and I need to be responsive with, good people will tell me and communicate with me. I will find it. It'll happen naturally. And it always has, and I always make sure that the person that's telling me about the story, I want the person who's telling me who can also see the vertical view of it, the higher story of what it might be calling. I want to hear it from someone who has space in their heart and love in their heart and responsiveness, not someone who's anxious and dramatic and traumatic. And because then I get hooked there too.
Well, and that takes me back to what I was saying of like, we can look at it from the moving away from, or we can look at things that transformation can happen from two places, from pushing away or moving towards. And when we have the space to look at it from a moving towards, it's a lot less dramatic and a lot less traumatic. And it's more joyful. and it's easier on us. And it's not to say there isn't a place for the moving away, or like you said, being aware of it. And I don't have to be aware of everything. It's not mine to do. We
Mhm.
had a conversation about that of like, what's mine to do? We talked about that. I think it was maybe even in the expectations podcast. But when I can look at it from that higher perspective, and what am I more moving towards, and really just hold on to what I'm moving towards, so much of that other stuff falls away. And I don't have to address every little piece of it and go down and root everything from my past, because it just doesn't serve me anymore, because I've become a new person, and that new person doesn't have that history.
Well, and it also takes energy. It takes a lot of energy to go back into things that you've already experienced. And sometimes we end up re-traumatizing versus saying, who do I need to be? There's the Gandhi quote, be the change you want to see in the world. Who do I need to become in order to embody this new way of life that I would like to live? And if you sat down and you wrote a root that, if you go, well, and I have a list here, and I need to be more present. I need to be more loving. I need to be more kind. And then if I can sit down and I presence those and I practice being that, what'll happen is that it creates space in my consciousness so that when I'm out in my world and all of a sudden I step into reaction again, and someone cuts me off and I'm like, "Rah!" And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's not kind. That's not who I want to be. You were mentioning that earlier, Maren. If I can catch it, then I can change it. And then I can say, okay, reset. How do I really want to be? Because that just took a lot of energy to kind of give that person the bird and yell and scream. And even though it might felt good in the second, because you released a whole endorphins and energy, and it gives you, by the way, it gives you an addiction, a rush. So we can become addicted to it. But if I say, if I can find another way that's kinder to me, that also is also kinder to the world. Like, don't we want more kindness in the world?
Mm.
Well, whatever you see, whatever your poor sad tomato story is, of saying, I want more of this, or I wish there was less that, and then ask yourself, if I could offer a remedy to the world, what would be the internal remedy? Would it be peace? Well, what is peace? My gosh, that's a big word, right? Really, that encompasses a lot. Like, really, like, divide that down. What does that mean in all the areas, and how can you embody it
Yeah, what
by
does it mean to you? Because
right?
peace to me, and what I would want to do for to make that happen, is going to be different from peace to you, Stephanie, right? Or
Totally.
to Joe, or to Sam, or to,
Mhm.
Yeah,
We're all created absolutely uniquely beautiful. And that's why whatever it is that's tugging at your heart, or, you want to live something different, it's not about doing more. It's not about getting more. It's not about, like, you're not going to have wealth if you don't practice being abundant.
right.
And you might say, well, I don't have any money stuff. And how can I be abundant? Oh my gosh, look, just breathe right now. There's an abundance of air for you. Be grateful. What are all the qualities that when you're wealthy, what will you be? What will you be then? What will you be experiencing? What will you be thinking? Take all those bees, buzz, 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 and bring them in and say, let me practice that. That's your doing. What do they say? 3% of what we do, it brings us everything that we need. Only 3%. So 97% is the beingness. And yet, very few of us are really practicing that. That's the doingness.
So something that we were talking about before we got on the podcast was meditation and what that looks like. And I love, Stephanie was talking to one of her
Clients.
patients,
Yeah.
clients. I
Yeah.
didn't want to say patients, her clients, and said, it's like he was asking, what does meditation look like? And she had a really good point of, there are 7 billion people on this planet, which means there's 7 billion different ways to meditate. And the reason I'm bringing this up right now is because the exercise that Stephanie mentioned of, go in and ask those questions and find those words and what is your list? Those lists don't come from us figuring them out. It's not going to sit down and be like, okay, if I want to become a wealth, see, let's use wealth, a wealthier person, here are all the things I need to do and who I need to become. Yeah, that's one
Right.
way that you could go about
Because
that.
you're going
And
to think,
that's
oh, I got to get a different job. I got to move to the city. I got to, get
right.
more education. I got, you're thinking about all these doing things. I'm going to say, stop,
Right.
please stop.
That's the old way of doing things, and it hasn't worked. And, like we know that that's the definition of insanity, of doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So let's do it differently. I want you to find your meditative place. And one of the things Stephanie was talking to her client about was like, he runs. Running, he likes to run. And instead of doing running from a place of, I run to get stronger, I run to lose weight, I run to, like, what if you ran and you put yourself in a meditative state? Just ask yourself that question of, what would it look like to have an abundant life, to be an abundant being from the
Yeah.
inside out? And then don't try and figure it out. They always say, like, our best ideas pop into our minds in the least likely times, when we're in the shower, when we're driving, when we're daydreaming. The reason for that is because our conscious mind has finally shut up.
And we're present. You
We're
see,
present.
you can't figure out your life.
No.
I would say if you could figure it out where, your reason for being and everything, you would have already. Because when we say I'm going to figure it out, we end up going back to our past. And by the way, you've already lived it, so why would you want to do the rerun of it again? Because you didn't like it the first time for the most part. There's some things you like, but for the most part, you're like, why would you want to go back and repeat it? It's like, been there, done that. It's a rerun. What if it was in your future, which you don't know yet? And so you need to be present, still, relaxed, surrendered, open mind, open hearted. As soon as we get into black and white thinking, we become rigid and it's going to hurt because we're going to be broken open. So all those places, the poor sad tomato places, are where it's hurting. It's where you've been broken open. Can you be present with that with love and go, interesting. What is happening for me instead of to me? And can I be with what it is? Feel what you feel without judging it or holding on to it. Let it move through you. And then allow, I love that word allow, right? Allow your future to meet you and be present to what's showing up.
Your future will inform you, and you don't know how to figure out your future. So you want to allow it to come to you, and it will meet you, as long as
Mm-hmm.
you're present. You have to, it's like you say that you're going to meet somebody for lunch and you don't show up. That's not fair. So your future is waiting for you to meet for lunch and saying, I got you. And so, yeah, our job is to be present.
And that is the hardest thing to do. So think about this. You're in the bank lineup when we used to not, we actually had to go to a teller, but or you're in a lineup at an event or something. You're not thinking about who's behind you. Like you're not looking going, "Oh my gosh," maybe you are looking back and look at the lineup behind me. Glad I'm here, right? So it brings you gratitude because where you are in the moment. But you're actually looking toward where you're going. And so that you need to pay attention. And that's a key word. Pay, invest. You need to put your time, your energy into your attention to where your consciousness is going, where your light is going, your thoughts. And are your thoughts moving you forward into your future? Or are they holding you hostage in your past of like,
In your
coulda,
poor,
would,
sad tomato.
right? The coulda, woulda, shoulda, ought to. Oh, why did I leave this job? Or why didn't I leave sooner? Or what did I do? And, that's poor, sad tomato. Instead of saying, okay, there's 3 more people in front of me. Oh, now there's 2 more people. Oh, good. I'm moving up. I'm moving up. There's your moving forward. But we're also talking about moving up, because there's a different version of you in your future. So think about grade school. See, some of us have the thinking that, oh, I learned, grade 1 math. It's going to get easier when I get to grade 12. Hell no, it's not going to get easier, because now you're going to be given more complex problems because you're more evolved. you learn the foundations and the fundamentals. And sometimes it's nice to go back and refresh those things just to get a deeper skill practice within, but to know that you will be given greater and greater challenges every time. And if you don't have a way of presencing, that's where anxiety, depression, fears, worries, all of the uncomfortability, like literally being in the muck, that's where that all comes from. So how do we move up? How do we go to a higher story? It's like, what is the highest possibility for you for your life? And this isn't about figuring out. This is about an inner quality. So, for example, when I say about a relationship for me, it's not about what it looks like. It's what it feels like. Like, who will I be when I have an ideal relationship? I don't have to know what that ideal relationship, but I can say, I will be calm. I will be truthful. I will be relaxed. I will be funny and humorous. I will be present. I will be, utilizing my gifts and strengths. I don't even know what all of those gifts and strengths are yet. But if I bring those qualities and I say, okay, I'm going to practice presencing them, I am literally pulled into my future rather than pushing away my past or looking in the rearview mirror, wishing that I had not left my past. Because that's really painful. That's really uncompassionate for myself. Instead of looking out the front windshield and moving forward and moving up.
I love that. So this week, one of the things that we would like for you to look at is, do you have what you all, I'm sorry, I was going to say, do you have a poor sad tomato story? And by the way, you do. So
So there, because that's where your gifts are.
Right, it is, and it's so beautiful that we all have them. So look at what's one of yours, and we probably all have multiple ones. What's one of your poor sad tomato stories that you could look at from a different perspective, from a future perspective of what is calling you to, and breathe into, find your happy place meditation. It doesn't mean that you have to sit down and go, Om. If that's your happy place, great, do it. If it's not, go for a run or go for a swim or draw or paint. Some beautiful, beautiful people in my life that have that's their meditative space.
Mm-hmm.
And hold that question for yourself of, what could this look like from my future? What is my future self? Where does it want to meet me for lunch on this one? And then do some journaling or do some, talk to a friend from a higher perspective.
And breathe.
Breathe. That's the biggest
Who
thing.
is putting the breath in your lungs? Hello, it's your future self. The one that actually sustains you, loves you, connects you, breathes you, makes your heart beat. Trust that one.
Yeah.
Connect to it. Be the lover.
Breathe into that this week, and please do join us either on Facebook or LinkedIn, or if neither of those makes you happy, then send us an email, because we want to hear from you. And share us with a friend, whoever you think might be, hey, you know what? That person's got a poor sad tomato story. I think they would really benefit from this. Well, send them our podcast. We would love for you to share us with a friend. And with that, we will see you all next week. Thanks for joining us.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.